This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and MV Avella, brought to you by Sit and Cards.
It's the Lekker Rugby Pod, brought to you by Sit and Cards. Harry is here to have a chat to us. And before we do that, Harry, please, guys, remember to like and subscribe. Last time we asked you to like and subscribe. 54 of you subscribed in one video. Can you believe it? So I made a point of it of not forgetting again. I've got a big notice on my wall there, so I remember, so everyone can be happy. So now that's out of the way. Welcome back, Harry.
How's it, MV? Are you feeling the end of the season approaching and to get some rest? Because my God, you've been like a hardest working man in rugby.
Yes, I tell you, I'm dead. I am dead. So if I make mistakes, and I've been making a lot of them lately, so my apologies. I did need a bit of a rest, I think. But anyway, thanks for asking for that. Just quickly, we had a competition running with certain cars, as you know. So last week, we had to guess the score between England and South Africa. And Carmen Blomerick won the 1,000 Rand. She got the closest, 28-21. That's pretty damn close to 29-20. So I think you must move on from Amanda and start supporting Carmen, Harry.
Carmen is the name of a great opera. So yeah, this is very dramatic that Carmen would win. Well done, Carmen. So now I always want to know these winners. I want to know if they do well the next week.
Yeah.
Like, is it a trend, or were you just lucky?
I asked her, is she going to, what do you think is going to happen against Wales and shit? Now it's going to be a big score. Asked her, being a Shark supporter, who the favorite players, and it's Eben. So later in this video, we played a little conversation we had, so make sure not to miss that. But Harry, it's a big weekend. It's the third weekend of the Autumn Nation Series. It's a fancy name for it. And I actually realized how big these games are. I mean, it's got its own special graphics design, and you have to not do this and not do that, and you have to leave some. They are so strict about these things. So it's a big deal. And so far, the Springboks seem to be on top of the world. They're the only team that really, shooting the lights out in terms of results, maybe not so much in terms of the way they play. So we can talk about all of them. But before we do that, let's start with the first game of the weekend. France versus Argentina. And you and I differ here. You have a certain opinion what's going to happen. I don't agree with you. Tell me what you think.
Well, this is the most difficult one to tip, to handicap. So anything I'm saying about this match is speculation. When you try to predict French moods and ups and downs, it's one thing. And then you add Argentina ups and downs. You have the most ups, downs, moody, temperamental matchup of the weekend. So I'm there for that. I like it. Here's my rationale. And it could be utter horseshit, but I feel like France celebrated that win over the All Blacks as if it was everything, as if it was the unofficial Autumn Nations Cup final of the year. That's one. Number two, there is dissent in their camp. You cannot tell me that Mathieu Jalibert can walk away from the team because he's not going to start. Nothing happens to him. He's a key player at Bordeaux. You cannot tell me there's nothing else going on. The French have had a revolution that we all know is pretty famous, and they had a century of turmoil. They always like that. France is the country perpetually in revolution. Like, it never stops. It's a forever revolution, and it's a little paradise. People by a population that think they're in hell. They're always unhappy. If anyone else in the world got the country of France to work with the Alps and the rivers and the old cities, we'd be happy as clams. But they're as sour as oysters. So I think France can always have bad camps and bad weeks. Fabien Galtier is a hell of a guy to work for. Antoine Dupont was pouting a little bit because he wasn't the man of the match. I think there's things in that camp that can go badly. And one thing is really great in rugby is if when you see the French disco, the Friday night lights, all that stuff, that's fine. It's also fun to watch France when they start to turn on their own team. And I predict that this weekend is going to be a tough match against Argentina, because Argentina, on the flip side, is a very happy camp with a very young coach who lets his players play. One of his best players, Oviedo, the number 8, is like 23 years old. He flips his loose. He's like, it's just a big swingers party. The locks lift the flanks clean rucks for the locks. It's all upside down. And, I think it's interesting to see Argentina play this kind of rugby. And here's a single motivating fact. Argentina feels hard done by, like they were robbed at the Aviva. So give me the team that feels like, no, I did win, and you northern cheats taken away from me, instead of the northern team that's congratulating itself, went on the piss for 4 days, been swimming in champagne, and then rock up on a Friday night. It's a short turnaround for them, and I also think it's a catch game. Now, that being said, France just really has a good team, and their age profile is really scary for next World Cup, by the way, because they're positioned a little bit like the Boks were in 2023, and that everyone that's good is between 28 and 32. That's scary, and then they have some young pups too. So it'll be a hell of a game. I'm saying that'll be the game of the week, because I think Argentina will come out like gangbusters, and then they know how to hold on. They're different than they used to be, and then I think the French power off the bench will make it a close contest. So I'm going with Argentina by 2.
Yeah. I think France is going to pull it off simply because they're so much better in depth and everything else. But like you just said, that's a very good point you made. France, typically, when they've won, they struggle to pick it up again for another weekend. Argentina is the other way around. If they also win, well, it's the same thing. If they win, typically they said next week after, we saw it against the All Blacks, they just struggle to get to get up to the same intensity. But the other way around, that motivation I want to show them. And then I think there's a lot of opinion that they actually were robbed. Many Irish transgressions, no penalties were given and the likes. You mentioned directly afterwards in that little video you made about the fact, where's the replay of the knock-on? Lots of question marks about it. We had a couple of irate Irish supporters on our channel here who, it wouldn't be too impressive our comments there. But the point is, I think Argentina was unlucky not to come away with at least a draw there. So, but I still think France might just be a bit too strong, at home. It's a tough team that, like you said, a good age profile. I heard Pinot might also be a little bit upset and, packing his bags, going home kind of thing. Is that true?
Oh, well, that's interesting because they're both from Bordeaux. The parochialness of France is even greater than the Bulls, Stormers, or the Waratahs, Reds. I mean, every country has that, Munster, Leinster. But there's something about the French system. Club goes way above country. They struggle to endorse the national concept. It's not as natural as it is when we flip the script and go from, oh, I hate that guy, the Bulls. Oh, he's a Buck, I love him. Like, that's actually immediate for every South African fan. It's not for the Frenchman. They are the game day and the things around Toulouse, and it's a way of life. Like the city of Montpellier revolves around their rugby team. They have other cities in France like Lille that are more around football, but there are rugby towns in France where that is everything. And Bordeaux is one of those places where they feel a little bit hard done by. They've been the better team in some ways, but they don't get to spend above the salary cap mysteriously as much as some other teams. And so, there's some stuff there. And I'm not saying that France is in a bad shape. In fact, they are definitely coming out of this autumn the best of the northern teams right now. But that's exactly why I'm predicting why they fall on their face, because that's just so French to be positioned perfectly. Everything's good, and then they come out too full of themselves, and it's mer de loose.
All flat in their faces. You and I have been talking about the fact that France always puts club before country. And now this weekend, the top 14 starts again. Toulouse, Toulon, I think, if I'm not mistaken. What happens to those players? Are they still picking their proper strength side, or the players going back to the clubs? I'm not sure what the team's going to look like.
Well, in the French leagues, they never really take away games seriously anyway. So it's a home league in that you have to win all your home games, and so they always take it off. It's a long league, so they platoon their players more than any other league. They take the long view. Not that it's round 10 right now, but it's almost like round 3. It doesn't matter. There's so many games that there's so much time left. So what happens is, it'll still be festive. It'll still be a cool game, but it's not a be all and end all. And it's time to show your depth. That being said, some of these teams are so deep anyway that their second team is still really strong.
All right. The next one up is Ireland versus Fiji. We saw yesterday that Andy Farrell stepping down to go coach the Lions, and we're talking about. I was under the impression that it's going to be temporary. He's going to be Lions coach next year and then come back to Ireland. But there's no clarity about it. It seems to be a bit of a sort of a vagueness around it. That seems to be. It looks a little suspicious, doesn't it?
There is whispers in Dublin, in the Urfu, and in the knowledgeable guys. And I cannot put any of this on record, but I've been told that there is a wondering if Andy's looking over his shoulder back to England, and whether there's other jobs that would appeal to him, like rescue jobs. Maybe he's done so much already and he smells problems in the age profile of Ireland. And he wonders, like, if I stay on too long, which is the great problem of most coaches, is what happened to Eddie Jones, by the way. If Eddie Jones had walked away in 2019 from England, we'd look at him a totally different way. He'd still be one of the top guys, one of the legends. Now it's clouded. So Andy Farrell's looking at his team. The new emphases of laws do not help him. He has a very unpowered team. He's not sure they can find more Aussies and Kiwis to stock up once Jameson, James, and Mac are gone. It's not always on offer. And all the laws changes and emphases changes have resulted in doing exactly what they said they didn't want to do. The more powerful, the more deep, the bigger, the better kicking game, the better chase game, the more South African or French counterattack team you have, the better. It's not rewarding teams like Ireland. It's too hard to build 10 phases. If you're trying to score from 10 phases, you're gonna get repelled. So Andy Farrell's a very clever man. Maybe looking at it this way: what if I do the Lions thing, but behind the scenes I make my deal with Wales or England? I get to go home to the north of England near Wales, or to England, and I rescue it. I become the great savior. Win the Lions series, already be rewarded for taking Ireland to #1 and winning the series in South Africa and New Zealand. And then I go and rescue the big dog with the most money, because if you can get the job at RFU, then you are sleeping on a bed full of money every night. So yeah, I can see that happening. Where a good Northerner, which is like, it's a bit like Northerner in South Africa. So Andy Farrell's from, up there, farming stock, tough guy. I think he wants to go home at some point. So, I can see him not wanting to be Irish forever.
Interesting thing you mentioned, that there's so much money in England. There's not so much money as we think. I mean, they just announced that they lost £40 million. So things aren't as rosy as it appears to be, and they're in trouble, because you mentioned to me that that's because they didn't have enough home matches, that the team's not winning enough, so their income is mostly derived from test matches at Twickenham. That seems to be fallen by the wayside a little bit. So England might be a bit in trouble. So you think there's a chance maybe of getting rid of Borthwick now, then bringing Andy Farrell in to make sure they start winning again, to make sure that the coffers start filling up, because they can't go and continue losing money like this.
Yeah. Okay. So first thing in England, RFU, they can always find some money from here, from there. Mystery money will come out. It's always going to be the richest union. They are billionaires, like legitimate billionaires, who love the sport of rugby in England. And as long as you come, hunt foxes on their land and shoot something, from your Range Rover with him, and he has player access to hang out and whatever, he'll chip in. So there's always money, plus capital ventures, and the incentive to invest in sport there on a tax basis is so high that it's always going to be fine. And whoever their head coach is going to come in with a strong hand if Borthwick's failing, because it'll be like, you've been failing for a while now. You've got to have me and all my guys, my assistant coaches, which is the key to being a successful head coach, by the way, is not only picking the right assistants, but being able to be happy and keep them. Felix Jones loves Rassie and misses him, doesn't like Steve. Steve ran off Alan Walters. Something's wrong in England. Andy Farrell is a likable guy. People do like him. They come to him. They stay with him. He's the one who poached Alan Walters. So I could see RFU thinking that Andy Farrell is the solution. Ronan O'Gara is also floating out there. There's other coaches out there, but I'm just saying, I think they'll find the money for the man they want.
Well, in that game, Ireland versus Fiji, Mick Byrne, the new coach, Fiji's not really, been shooting the lights out. What do you expect from that game? I think Ireland will probably win it quite comfortably, but they're going to play a couple of younger players. Prendergast, for example, I saw him make his debut. What's your thinking?
Prendergast looks a little bit skinny for Test rugby.
Yeah.
And I think that sounds funny, right? So why do you have to be a thick guy? Wow. But I think you have a certain amount of contact that you have to absorb. He looks a little bit young in a
Gangly.
weird way. Yeah. There's young guys who don't seem young. Like Andre Pollard when he was 20 seemed fine, but then I don't know. I don't see this one. Your first question is, what should happen in the game? It would be a huge shock if Ireland were to lose to Fiji in Ireland. I don't know if that's the first time it would ever happen, but I think it would be. And it would be a tectonic shift. It would be, there's already a narrative coming up around Ireland in this autumn, which is they didn't adjust well. Durban was their Super Bowl. They had nothing left. Their age profile stinks. Their bench is creaking with creaking bones of old people. There's no impact. The way they've handled the 10 succession to Sexton has almost made it more cloudy, that every time Jack Crowley has a bad moment or a bad day, someone's thinking about Prendergast or Frawley, or like no one's just said, this is my crown, put it on my head and I'm on the throne. And the lack of Sexton in getting back into shape post phase 2. So Ireland looks like they're in shape to run their moves on phase 1 and 2, but then phase 3, they fall apart. And even the times they scored against the Boks were off of first phase or second phase play, or just, scrappy. The ability to do what they have to do with not a powerful carrying team is they have to get 10 phases, 8 phases, 7 phases in your red zone. It looks like Johnny Sexton was much more influential than we thought he was at being a coach on the field who could shout at Henshaw, tell Aki that he's in the wrong fucking spot, and bellow over to James Lowe and tell him to be in the different. Like, that's actually takes someone being older and Johnny Sexton. I don't know if Jack Crowley can scream at James Lowe. Yeah. So I think if they lost to Fiji, everything I just said would suddenly become front and center. If they win against Fiji handily, then no, it was fine. It was fine. Classic human behavior. We'll move that over to the next Australia game. So I think it's a catch game in that sense. In that Fiji has nothing to lose. There is no expectation. They know that man for man, if you put the Fijian and an Irishman in a little box in a 5 meter by 5 meter drill like we all used to play, and you say, you tackle you tackle you run, Fiji would win. So it's just up to Fiji to create a game that doesn't make sense, which is, lure them into a macho ego contest. If Ireland keeps their head and doesn't ever put themselves in lots of one-on-ones, but instead keeps the ball moving, diagonals, kicking 30 times, 35 times, lots of set piece, then they should comfortably win. If they fall into the trap of saying, I think I'm as cool and hard and tough and swivelly as Semi Radradra or something, they're going to learn very quickly that man for man, Fiji still makes the hardest people to tackle in the world.
Same thing with the French top 14. Lots of Fiji players play there. Is Fiji going to be full strength, or is it going to be going to have to let some players go?
Yeah, so that's the thing about Fiji and all the Pacific Island nations. They don't have a strong enough hand in negotiations with the unions and with the clubs to be able to get what they want. So you saw in the first game Fiji played against Scotland, they were bereft, and now they're going to start shedding again. They don't have proper facilities. They have to pay as they go. All the other top 10 unions, have contracts with hotels, lodges, gyms, food, nutrition when they go on these tours. Fiji literally has to sometimes pay for the hotel room tonight. They actually have to have players kick in. They'll share rooms, 4 or 5 guys. It's a really sad story, and it's not a story of woe and oppression, by the way, only. I mean, I think World Rugby has been derelict a little bit between the Pacific nations, but it's also corruption inside the unions themselves and in the countries themselves where money is flowing. And I know that because I worked on a project with that for Samoa. And the money is getting from World Rugby now on expansion and getting to some of these nations, and it's getting, sucked up into, where. So I think it's difficult to judge Fiji unless they're playing a proper prepared tournament like the World Cup. You can see how well they do there. But this type of thing at the end of a season with their players beholden, it's one of the toughest things for Fiji to manage.
All right, the next game up is South Africa versus Wales, but I think we'll leave that for later in the conversation. Let's just do the other ones quickly. Italy versus New Zealand. Italy won every single specification statistic on the board against Georgia, yet they almost lost that game. And that was an interesting one. I thought, ooh, pretty close there.
Yeah, on that, rugby is an interesting game because there are some sports in which, let's see, let me think of what it would be. Tennis. Okay, so in tennis, if you have a higher first serve percentage, a lower unforced error count, and your performance on break points is superior, you definitely won the match. I cannot even imagine a scenario where you didn't. So like if you took a tennis expert and you saw those three stats and lined them up, you'd say, oh, I know who won. And I could even guess it was 6-3, 6-2. Football, a little bit different because a goalkeeper could literally save every single shot on goal. One team has 13 shots on goal and gets none. Other one has one and gets it. So I guess that's true. But over the course of a season, if you had a +10 on shots on goal, average, you'd obviously be top of the league. Rugby is weird because there's no such thing. Like, there really isn't. Like, if you had 5 charge downs in a match, you could be down by 3 or 4 tries. Look at the Peter Steph the toy try. And what if you were ahead on every other statistic? You got charged down twice, you threw 1 interception, and you got pinged on your scrum 3 times, and you're 22. I mean, you lost the game by 35 points, but you could have every other stat. So that's why it's a beautiful game. Is you can win a game like the French did against New Zealand when New Zealand had twice as many carries, twice as many passes, 65% territory. It doesn't matter. It's when you tow the ball ahead to space and Louis Biel-Barry beats Sevu Reece and Anton Leonard-Brown like they stuck in cement, you score a try. Takes you 2 seconds.
No, I'm interested in that. Obviously, I think New Zealand's going to be too strong there. We'll see what happens. The next one is one I look forward to the most, almost, apart from the Springboks now. Scotland versus Australia. Yeah, you and I differ again. I actually think Australia's going to pull this one off. They seem to be riding high. I know they might be running out of a depth a little bit, and Scotland might be bringing back the big guns, but I just don't know. I have a feeling this Joe Schmidt team seems to me to be the real deal.
Yeah, well, we agree on one thing, that it's the most pivotal match of the weekend for those two teams, in the sense that Australia was never expected to beat England. So that's a bonus. They were expected to pound Wales, and so they did. But those two games don't tell you much about Australia. Everyone's pounding Wales right now, and England's a bit flaky, and you kind of caught them unawares. It's the Scotland game that I think going into this, I wrote up for the Roar. This is the bellwether. This is the barometer. This is the match where you can see, Joe Schmidt, did you or did you not correct the flaws? Because you will get a proper examination at Murrayfield in what's probably going to be snow, between -2 and 8 all day. Game time, it'll be somewhere hovering around 0, and it's windy. And it's definitely raining, so precipitation will happen, but it's built up high. It's the kind of place that actually does ice pretty quickly. If you got, that kind of weather coming from the Southern Hemisphere with all your guys playing in Australia, wearing budgie smugglers and surfing at the beach, and then suddenly you're in that kind of hostility. And here's the biggest problem. Your 9 is good for Scotland, but it's more about Finn Russell, Sione Tuipulotu, and Hugh Jones, with guys like Darcy Graham, Duan van der Merwe on the sides, and Blair Kinghorn, who's no slouch. So it's that back line, and Australia has not shown they can defend very well. They let Wales score points. They let Wales score points in July. They shipped so many points in the Rugby Championship. What they found against England and Wales, the tour, was they could score points. So they tried to outscore someone. That's fine. That's fine and dandy. But I don't know if you're going to outscore Scotland on a snowy, windy, cold day, and trade points with them when your back line is led by Noah Lolesio, Jake Gordon, and the new guy, Joseph Okoso-Suaalii, and Lenny Kittal's a proper operator. But that core of Noah and Joseph, 2 biblical names, up against Finn, Sione, Hugh. Hugh Jones and Sione Tuipulotu found gaps in the notorious Bok defense. I mean, they've made breaks. If a couple of those bosses go to hand, it's a different story. So I worry about Australia's ability to defend, not so much about their ability to score. I think they will score, but trading scores with Hugh Jones and a matchup like Tuipulotu versus Joseph Akosu, who has only played one test. And the thing about I know that playing in the midfield, now that Sever Karevi is out because the red card was upheld, he will see things he hasn't seen because he's playing against Finn Russell inside him, Tuipulotu outside him, and the young man will definitely make mistakes because everyone makes mistakes in their second test.
Yeah, you've been on about Lord Laurie Fisher's defensive system. Did you see anything different in this tour compared to what it was before? You talked about it being a sliding defense. I can't remember what the exact word. It's not the South African defense. It's sort of a hybrid kind of a thing. Is there any improvement or any changes, or they're still sticking to their guns there?
No, it wasn't good against Wales. It wasn't good against Wales, and you saw that mostly when they went down to 14. I think what Lord Laurie Fisher has corrected, and by the way, there's not a better man in rugby than Laurie. What he has made them better at is the defensive ruck. So the Wallabies are attacking the ruck. They're doing what Ireland and Scotland was doing in the first 2 weeks of the autumn series of counter-rucking, just the right time. Australia has bigger bodies. Okay, Will Skelton is the biggest body in rugby. And they can move the ruck. They can jar the 9. And they're doing well. They're putting pressure on the ball at source. They're still not good at the scramble. They don't have a rapid fold. The young kid, Max Jorgensen, had to come back and sweep around. Just his sheer Australia out from being scored. But Wales had their chance. Woeful Wales had their chances and could have scored quite a bit more. So, I wouldn't focus too much on the number, the 50. I look at the Welsh number and say, ooh, if Wales can put that much on you, what can Finn do? And then on the flip side, we know Glasgow. We know we know the capabilities of them to stop. Even though the Boks scored 4 tries, it didn't look like 4 tries. There was a pushover scrum at the end. There were some things there that made that score look a little bit better than it was. So I'm thinking Scotland at home. If they played in Australia, then I'd pick Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, they've been there for a while. I mean, they're pretty used to the cold now. Joe Schmidt coached in Ireland. He knows how to manage that kind of a thing. That's a nice thing about having such a well-traveled, such an experienced coach as well. I think it's going to be humdinger. I can't wait for that one. It's going to be interesting. Right, the last one is England, Japan. I mean, I'm sure England might just, if they're lucky, pull off a victory here. What do you think?
Yeah, so if you're Steve Borthwick and you're contemplating your career and how it would go next, and then you realize Eddie Flippin Jones is coming to Twickenham. And in one moment, just like Samson, blinded, kills everyone in the last moment, you can see Eddie Jones having special pleasure in sabotaging the Sweet Chariot, just like ramming an iron rod into the Sweet Chariot. And with that grin that Eddie has, loving the press conference. And if you have to imagine, like, well, that could never happen, then just go to Brighton Beach and think about
Brighton.
are the Boks of 2015 better than England of 2024? Yes, they were. So I wouldn't be so cocksure. Now, that being said, it should be 7 tries to 1, 6-2. It should be one of those games where England actually does show what it has, which is pretty extreme quality across the board. They have a really proper pack, hard pack, intelligent pack. They do have benders. They have speed out wide now and trickery in the midfield. They are just not playing well. Like, they have the talent. They have the pedigree. They have a really good 10. They play in such a way that you understand why they were 1 or 2 points away from toppling New Zealand. Should have beaten Australia, obviously. And they were not out of it against the Boks at 2019. So, yeah, you would think that they can handle Japan. But, and it's a big but, on his day, Eddie Jones can think of something no one else can think of. He's not good at sustainability. He's not a good long-term coach. But on one day, if you said, what could you do that was weird, that would make England uncomfortable? How can you make someone unhappy? Because I think Eddie's good at making people unhappy. I think he would probably imagine how to make Borthwick uncomfortable.
Interesting. I spoke to Andre Pretorius yesterday, and he spoke to CJ van der Linde, who's now the scrum coach for Toshiba, I think. I'm not sure. But they said it's interesting that Japan's scrums are not what they used to be. They're much better because they're now starting to believe that they can actually scrum, because they always thought that because we're smaller and, lighter, that they're not as good as they are. But they are very good, actually, and they're very good in their legs. And the fact that they then scrum as a unit, all 8 of them scrumming together. So, that surprise you're referring to might just be, in the form of a scrum. We know England's scrum is creaking a little bit. We saw Angus Bell having a jolt against England and then struggling against Wales. So you never know. I think that's where we have to look at what Japan might come up with.
Yeah, and in scrum wars, you can neutralize a scrum. Like, let's say that England does appear to have a stronger scrum at some point in the match. Go back to Brighton. What did they do? They had, Yanni du Plessis never even got the chance to march one step forward. The ball was out. It was, 0.8 seconds, ball in, out. It was channel 1. So, and Eddie's always been someone who didn't believe in the fact that a scrum could win a match. He's never thought that. And he's wrong, of course, because they can, but he's pretty good at de-emphasizing it. And I would think that, so England is obviously flaky. What Eddie and Japan would realize is, if we could be mentally stronger than them, they're better than us. They should win. They're at home. But if we get into their minds, if we start making them think, oh my God, here it goes again, the final quarter collapse, we could be something. That being said, I'm putting all my money on England to cover the spread and pound them. So this is not a dramatic weekend, except for Australia, the Australian game and the French game. All the other ones are supposed to go by script.
Yeah, for sure. Talking about the last game now, the one that matters to us all, South Africa versus Wales. And the first question I want to ask you, there's a lot of, talking up Warren Gatland, Rassie is, giving him his full support. I mean, really. But we know there's a lot of bad blood there. How much do you think Rassie, so for example, selecting this strong kind of a team, we all suspected a bit more of experimental side. This is a full-on proper Springbok side, with 1 or 2 exceptions. Does he want to really pound home the fact that he's not better? Does he want to send Warren Gatland, off into the sunset with the tail between his legs? Is there any truth to that kind of a rumor?
Yeah, I think so. Have you ever had someone that you don't like forgive you publicly? Like, they did you wrong, but they go public and say, hey, Harry, I forgive you. You want to fuck them up, eh? Like, you don't get to forgive me. I forgive you or not. There's bad blood there. It's forever bad blood. It'll never be solved. Doesn't mean that they have to, like, when they meet each other at some award ceremony when they're old guys at 70, will they fight now? They can pretend they know how to play the game. Rassie's a mature man now, he's not stuck in the past. But it's a big but. I don't know if everyone's been reading the columns by Warren Gatland for a year and a half in the, where is it, the Guardian or the Telegraph? And I read those. And Warren, he sticks the boot into Rassie all the time. He does it, what's it called? Passively aggressively. He suggests that the game has been tarnished by the Springboks. He always brings up the Lions series again as if the Nick Berry video won the series for the Boks. Like, the no doubt that they would have won, but for. He suggests that the bench should be shortened. He talks about how the game doesn't look right anymore. He castigates the Boks for the style of play. This is over 20 columns. 15 of them are, barely couched criticisms of the Boks, but really of Rassie. Because when we talk about the Boks today, they are a Rassie creation. So Rassie, I know, reads everything voraciously. He pretends to be the simple guy, from Eastern Province who doesn't care. I'm just a simple boykie, but he's voracious, and he doesn't ever sleep. So he just reads everything and obsesses on it. I think you can take this to the bank, that it's not the single motivating thing or the most important thing to Rassie this week. He's trying to find people, improve depth charts. He wants to finish the year on a high. He wants to go 11-2, wonderful post-World Cup. But if what he does this weekend gives Gatlin the sack, oh, there'll be a few more brandies there for that. And he'll say something that he probably shouldn't say, and he'll probably like do some congratulatory thing like, "Oh, Warren, what a the second time you were with Wales was even better than the first," or something that's not true. That's funny.
I saw an interesting thing today on Twitter somewhere. Someone posted Warren Gatlin's biography on the Wales Rugby Union website, where it shows you, this is Warren, and they said nothing about him. They say he was reappointed after Wayne Pivac was sacked, because he only won so many games. The whole thing was about how bad Wayne Pivac was. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, and nothing about how good Warren Gatlin is. But let's be honest, Wales's problems are not Warren Gatlin's fault. There's much bigger problems in Wales than just Warren Gatlin. What's going on there?
That's fair, but I mean, he won 6 out of 24 matches that he on the second stint, and the problem was saying that there's a big problem in Australia. So, why fire Eddie Jones? Because what are you going to do? Who can you replace him with? The thing is, you can always replace him with someone. And the problem with the head coach staying on because of the rationale of, but there's bigger problems is, you do fix it at test level. Test rugby and popularity at test rugby does fix grassroots. When the Springboks win the World Cup, the stadiums do fill up around the world. The merchandise sells like hotcakes. Little boys playing around somewhere in Germiston are going like, hey, I want to be a Springbok. And those guys would have played football, but now they play rugby. And you open up new markets. And so you fire Warren Gatlin because he is a dam. He's stopping the water. No assistant coaches want to come play. You fire the head guy because within that, even if it's not immediately better, you have a chance to be Joe Schmidt. So you fire Eddie, who had scraps for assistant coaches. You bring on Joe, who's known as a very decent man, who doesn't yell at you. He doesn't scream at you. He might look at you very tough and you work hard, but he's not like a, improper person. He's not like a liar or a manipulator. He's not the guy telling Dylan Lage, you're going to be the flyer for the Stormers like Eddie did, and he jets off the next day, knowing that he had the job in England, and telling Dylan that he's going to be the next Springbok fly-off. I mean, like, that's just evil. So Joe's not that. If you can hire guys like Jeff Parling, Laurie Fisher, and you have Mike Cron for the scrum, I don't know if you're going to make the Wallabies top 5, top 4 again, but you have a chance to do it. If you stick with the guy that's not doing it right, and you keep saying things like, well, there's bigger problems in Australia. Okay, so then there's bigger problems in Australia and you'll have them forever. It's the cure comes from Rassie Erasmus, Jacques Nienaber at the Boks, 2017, 2018. Now you look back and say, oh, it was inevitable. No, it wasn't. If we had stuck with Alistair longer, it would be even a less attractive place to come to if you're a young assistant coach. And then you don't get guys like Jerry Flannery. You don't get guys like Felix Jones, because who would want to move around the world to a place where you had losing feel and, whatever was going on. Alistair was a good guy. So it's not that, but, a lack of leadership.
All right. So who do you think? Who might be in line for Wales, just to speculate?
Ronan O'Gara keeps saying that he wants to coach in Test rugby, and that's a good shout. He would know the Celtic ways of doing things. He's also not a guy who needs everything to be, super well funded, and I think Ronan O'Gara would like to be the Six Nations, beating some of those teams. His ultimate goal, of course, would be to coach Ireland, but there's that. There's also the caretaker approach, where you do an interim, and then that interim sometimes becomes the guy. But the most interesting name I've heard floated around is Dave Rennie. Dave Rennie, in retrospect, Dave Rennie looks better for the telling of the story now. Like, now we know what we know. We go back in time. His team has always played Wales well. They beat Wales in the final tour of Rennie. And so, I think that's an interesting prospect.
Felix Jones, Toby Booth.
Felix Jones is locked up in a forever garden leave. The theory about that is he just, doesn't want to work with those guys and waiting to go back to Rassie.
That's it.
Yeah, who knows?
I like Toby Booth. I saw him here once when the Ospreys played against the Bulls, and I was quite impressed with him in that press conference. Nice guy, knows what he talks about, what he's talking about. He impressed me. But anyway, let's talk about the Springboks versus Wales now. Interesting team that we got there. John Klein is back from a 10-month injury. I saw the press conference today. That's quite a bit of a, especially in the second row, those two locks, a little bit of a lack of game time, let's call it that, between him and Franco. Franco being out with a broken leg for a long, long time. What are you thinking of that team, just in general, and about that second row in specifically?
Well, I tend to take Rassie at his word literally nowadays, because I think he's in a different phase of coaching where he's not sarcastic anymore or hiding the ball. So he's saying that next year is the year that they like narrow things, and instead of having 52 players, it'd be more like 45, and then the next year, 2026, you get down to sort of low 40s, and then you're like the shape of your 34-man squad that goes to Australia in 2027 takes shape. So if that's true, and I have no reason to disbelieve Rassie, this match doesn't mean very much. It's just doing two things. It's keeping your promise that you said everyone who went on tour will play. So there you go. John Klein gets a go. Cameron Hanekom gets a go. Jordan Hendricks gets a go. The second thing is to win the match with that starting. Like, I think in Rassie's perfect world, Andre never goes on the field. He just keeps his tracksuit on and has a good laugh at the end, because Jordan Hendricks goes 80, kicks 4 out of 5, 5 out of 6, does a good job. Don't have to win a lot. It may even be underwhelming, but you survive. John Klein gets a run. Franco Mostert gets to, his return from injury, gets that under control. You swap the front rows, of course, but maybe you hold back a guy like Eben, unless you just have to. I feel like it's one of those pool games in the World Cup where you challenge your starting 15 and you say, I will consider it a failure. Like, we are the famed bomb squad. We're all about bringing people on in bomb squad. We're going to go the opposite this week. Rassie magic. Flip your mind. Now consider it a failure if I substitute you. And your grade will be highest if your compartment guy doesn't come on. The longer his tracksuit's on, the better I like you, Cam Hanekom. So, work hard, spend it all. I think that's the message I get from the way the team was named. That's just my feeling. So win the game, of course, you must. But, keep my promises. Realize there's another year coming. And nobody, for the love of God, nobody get injured. So make some business decisions. You don't need to twist yourself into a pretzel at a rock. No cards. Let's just get the win under the roof and get out of town.
Before we continue, I just want to remind people you can still enter that competition of certain cars where you can guess the score. So the 1,000 rands at stake here. Leave your comments your score in the comments below. Make sure you enter. I wanted to ask you about Thomas du Toit at Lucid, because Ox was initially selected, and then it was a bad gash. I was surprised that he was included in the team. And then Thomas was swapped to Lucid, like you and I have been talking about often that he can do. Did it for Bath in the final against Northampton. And Wilco comes back, and I had a laugh yesterday with Andre. Andre said Wilco got the ball, I think, twice, and he went to ground immediately. He said it looked like a sniper was shooting him from the roof of the stadium. That's quite funny. Afterwards, I went and had a look, and he was right. I mean, I'm a bull. I would love to see Wilco do better. What was your impression of Wilco in that game? Do you think there's any truth to it, or was it a bit of the moment got a bit too big? Do you think?
I don't know. Maybe someone told him the worst possible thing would be to lose the ball in contact, so he just decided to take one of the variables out, which is fall immediately and get cleaned. Like, those two props are the heaviest props that have played for the Springboks ever, maybe. What are they, 144, 135 plus each other? I think at least 4 kgs of Wilco is his strapping around his knee. I think he just walks around with strap. He never takes it off. He probably showers with it. And so I think the strapping tripped him. It wasn't the sniper.
No, you're right. Right, and we talked about Hanekom. Now we've talked about it in depth now, but let's just do that again quickly. Where do you see him coming on, and when, and whose place?
Well, I think he's a 6'8". He could play 7, but he's a 6 and 8. He's one of those guys. I heard a lot of people saying what he was like over this whole year. And I just put out a simple tweet this week, and I just said, of all the players that Rassie Erasmus has capped in his time, Cameron Hanekom is the most like Rassie the player. And when you go back and you look at Rassie the player, he was a 6 and an 8. He played 8 like a 6, and he played 6 like an 8. Always a link man, always a flyer, proper hard, was always involved in the fights, was good at seeing the game, was quicker than most, quicker than other loose forwards. And he had a bit of that physique, which is, you felt like, unlike today, where probably, for one trip to the Spurs sticks with him a little bit. I think he couldn't keep weight on at first, Rassie. He was a skinny flank and a skinny 8. So I think Cameron Hanekom's like that. And I think that also portrays, it's one thing about Hanekom and the fact that it took so long to get him in the mix. And the funny part of it happening against Wales, one of the countries he was eligible for, was when we have a son who's a lot like us, let's say you have 2 sons, and the one that's the most like you is the one you're the hardest on. And the child, son or daughter, that's the most like you personality-wise is the one you are the most exasperated by, and the one you're always pushing. And it's the one that's opposite. You're like, that's great, this and that. And the other one's looking at like, why? He's doing the same thing I did. So I think it's interesting to be Cameron and be coached by Rassie. I think ultimately it'll be great, but I could also imagine it might be hard at first, because of all the kinds of players on the field, when they come off and on Monday morning, the one that you could actually talk to about what they did right or wrong, it'll be Cameron that Rassie will most identify with. Because just because you're a coach doesn't mean you're not a player in your mind and you're thinking, I would have done this and I would have done that. I don't think Rassie's going to go to Jesse Creel impart wisdom about the 13 channel, but he can definitely talk to Cameron Hanekom about when he should have paused back or pulled back, or when he should have taken contact, the direction in which he runs. And I think ultimately, if Cameron is a coachable guy like Elric Lowe is, it will be good, but it'll be hard.
Interesting about Cameron. He looks like a deer in headlights to me. It's like he cannot believe that he's actually there. Every press conference I've seen with him, he was like big round eyes and like, very, very tense. And I hope that doesn't translate into the game.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I guess we can be surprised. I always think that the confidence that comes from preparation, what is it? Vince Lombardi said, exhaustion makes cowards of us all. Like the tireder you are in the game, the more scared you are. It's actually a corollary to what Peter Steph Toy famously said in the locker room. And I think Cameron Hanekom is gym ready. I think he's fit ready. I think he can beat his opposite man. I don't think he looks across at the Jack Morgans of the world or the Tame Bashams and thinks that he has to stand back. I think he thinks if they were in a scouting combine like NFL and they were doing all those vertical leaps and 40-yard sprints, I think he thinks he would win. I also think that he thinks if he put them in a cage, he'd be Drickus and he would win that too. So I don't think the babyface should fool us. I sense Cameron's a confident young man. My big thing with him is not that he'll shrink. My big thing for Cameron is I worry that he'll try to do too much. And it's still proper test rugby. Those are still proper test players. And they've had 40 games. You've had none. So let the game come to you, if that makes sense. Like play what you see, but don't try to create it. Strike while the iron is hot, but don't keep striking until, you make it hot. And because you get pinged. And then you're the guy that's too much on the screen for the wrong reason. Like you don't want to hear your name going out of the principalities because you got penalized.
It's interesting you mentioned that in terms of caps. I mean, we're like 600 and something caps more than their team, Wales' team. But we've got a fly-off with one game. to his credit.
Yeah,
And
we've got the low caps in the wrong places.
yes, that worries me. What's your thinking about Jordan Hendricks? I'm actually quite excited about him. I think he's sort of, taking that, what happened to him after the Wales game. He stepped up. He's really took to heart what he learned there. You saw these big match temperament in that Currie Cup final and the likes. I'm excited. I think he's got sort of a hybrid, and I think between all the other flyers, we've got the Mani and the Damians and the Andres and the likes. I'm excited to see what he can do. Now, like you said, maybe he just stays on for 80 minutes and then if he can shoot the lights out, he's going to stake a claim here.
Yeah, I think that's what Rassie and that's I think what Tony Brown wants. I think Tony Brown rates him pretty highly. That comes from training ground. So a guy like Tony Brown, has to look at what he sees. He's not probably looking at tapes from the Sharks that much. I think he's looking at what he sees on his training ground and his ability to double back, to do the loop, to make a spot pass for 20 meters from your left hand and your right hand, to kick from both feet, because Jordan's got it both feet, and that's interesting for Tony Brown. If you can cross kick like Mani, both feet. For anyone that's saying, why is Jordan getting another chance? Let's just use the Mani Libok rule, which is you get 15 chances.
It's a chance for you and another chance for you, and here's another chance, and you get a chance, and you get a chance. So there you go.
And so what I would say about that is that's because they see something. You see something in Mani, it's unmistakable, it's rare talent, it's vision, it's the ability to do something that is, hard to replicate. Sasha had the same thing. So I think Jordan is just one more of those guys where they say, leading into 2026 and 25, before that, where do we want to put our cap? Where do we want to put 3 or 4 caps? Maybe it's dirt track bully, maybe it's the easier games, but where is it? And then the second part of that is in 2026, would Jordan be a good backup? Would he be, if injuries struck Andre and Mani, where are we? Right now, where is it? So, I think that's interesting. So then you have a Sasha Jordan youth brigade. So I don't hate it at all. And I think it's the perfect game to throw a guy in and challenge him and say, you will be successful in this game if we never have to bring Andre in. Don't make Andre come out in the cold and play in the snow. I mean, it's under a roof, but don't let him sit. And that's a humorous way to motivate a young man.
Talking about a lack of caps, that front row, it's got a serious lack of caps as well. I mean, it's Thomas and Johan Grobler and Wilco Louw. That's not the most experienced I've ever. Wilco's had a couple of games 3 years ago, but still, it's a relatively inexperienced front row in terms of ball rugby.
Well, Grobler that's a big gap. Tank and Wilco, pretty seasoned campaigners. I mean, I remember running into Wilco Louw in 2018 in New Zealand in the shop with Argia, and so he's been around the setup. That means to be more clear, he's been scrumming in the Human school of scrumming for a while. Most of what he's been doing has been going up against guys like Ox and proper Trevor Nyakani. I mean, he's been around. He has had the best scrum school in the world in that he's been scrumming Boks. The other thing is, even though the Premiership is not the best league in the world, in terms of set piece and the grind and the conditions that you're likely to find this weekend, very recognizable. I mean, I think he would slot in pretty easily. And I like the idea that they keep the bomb squad second row the way it is. I mean, Vinny could be starting, but I think it's good to have Malcolm and Vinny as a team that knows how to bind a certain way. And then you have the extra Lucy, the Steenekamp. I think a proper scrummaging row that's so heavy. I mean, you just cannot move Tank and Wilco. If they decide not to move you, it's like the old drill in Krav Maga, that fighting skill where the final thing before you get your black belt, like a guy like me, they just lay on the floor on your tummy, and then 3 guys my exact size on top of me, and then you say, go, fight. And you realize that there's some things about size, momentum, and physics that you cannot overcome. The test is not that you'll win, it's that you take 2 guys out. So I feel like Wilco Louw is immovable. I think if he was on top of you, he would not be able to breathe. So I feel like this is a proper grown-up man's game that Rassie's playing with this front row. He's saying, try to move us. If you drop the ball, Wales, You're going to have to go against these mountains. And, probably they're not going to kick out too much if you're the Boks. Maybe they don't want so many lineouts. Maybe it's me like it's a scrum war, ball in play. And they feel like if the ball stays in play for a long time, and you got Rassie and you got Hendricks, the brothers Hendrickse, and you got your Lekkerbacks, it's going to be a good night for the combination of, like the guys who can move the piano up front and the guys who play the piano up back.
I want to ask you a question that's going to force you to think out of your box here. You're Warren Gatland, back against the wall, fighting or coaching for your life, even though you say you want to go retire on the beach somewhere. You know the Springboks very well. You know the Wales team a little bit, I suppose. What would you do? How would you approach this game if you were the Wales coach? How would you play these Springboks?
Oh, fight. I would grab stuff you're not supposed to grab. I would tell everyone to insult patronage and heritage and mothers and grandmothers. I would turn it into an ugly affair. I would spoil the ball. I would have hands in the ruck. I would pull pants down. I would have late hits on number 9 all day long. Just half a second so the ref doesn't know. I'm not sure. Maybe you were committed. I would commit to tackle Jaden all the time and then finish my tackle or bounce off. I'd play dirty. And if that's all it was. Now, I don't think that's good enough for Warren. I think Warren's probably doing his best work in the boardroom right now. He's setting expectations very low. He's made it where if Wales only loses by 60, then it's okay. It's a youth brigade. Look, I have no caps. This is the world champion, double world champions. Look how big they are. Look how many caps they have. We're just thankful to be alive, and rugby was the winner. Maybe he'll be like fake Warren, doing that stuff and just try to get, to the next pay period because he's highly paid. I think he's negotiating right now and he's looking at a buyout. He holds a lot of cards because Wales gave away too much. So yeah, I think that's what it would do. But I mean, listen, I'm not advocating violence in rugby. I'm just saying that if you made me do that, and I was the forward coach for Wales, that's what I would tell my guys to do.
I asked Andre the same question, and he said you make it as slow as he possibly can, frustrate them. You agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, take a long time to get from place to place. I think also just kick the leather off the ball. I mean, just refuse to play rugby. Remember that series that the Welsh had in South Africa, and there was a 3-game series, and the amount of, there was a game where Wales had 60 meters in carries. That's all. They just ran 60 meters when they were in the game. It came down to the final. So
and they won the second one. Yeah, that's 2022. Yeah,
just be a tackle machine. But yeah, I think with a 20-minute being on the cards, it's not the end of the world for Wales to get a red card if it's a 20 red. So, I would think they would do that early. Go high, go hard. The Durban approach. Just do what Ireland did. I think the template to follow for everyone is not Argentina in Argentina, because that was aided by us missing a kick and not having a proper team on the field. But it's Durban. Just, in the new world, you can sometimes bully the Boks. So maybe that's why Rassie picked Wilco and Tank, and then has a bomb squad that is, the dark alley bomb squad. Yeah, maybe that's it. Like, let's see how it goes. If we're playing, if we're getting fail, if it's one of those dirty games, then we can bring on the bouncers in the end.
Hey, I told you I'm looking forward to this a lot. I'm having a chat with Heyneke Meyer next week. So we're going to talk about what he thinks of the Springboks, a bit of his career, what he's up to lately, and the like. So I look forward to it. You've met him before at the Houston Sabercats.
Yeah, he's a good man. And he's not what people say he is. He's a very modern guy, statistically driven. Took the Houston Sabercats to the top of the league with really smart play. Didn't have the best players. He's evolved a little bit in that he lets his players play what they see in the red zone, but he's still a guy that doesn't believe in playing rugby from your own 22. And one thing I always say about Heyneke is that all the other coaches in the world and coaching staffs and players who played around the 2015 time always said one thing about Heyneke Meyer is they had the best set pieces. Those Boks had the best set pieces in the world, and they had the best phases 1, 2, 3. That the post third phase is where Heyneke probably tried to script things too much. But just a good guy, and only wish the best things for him. Also, a really good talent scout. I mean, don't forget that he's the guy who saw Andre Pollard when he was 12 or 13 years old and said, "That's my guy."
Yeah, true. Listen, we're also going to be having Brett on our show if everything works out. If he says yes, I asked you if we can. I'd love to have a chat with him just so people can get to know him a little bit better. So the Aussie in this strange little triumvirate, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, that'd be fun because Australia has had one of the most interesting tours. I mean, no matter what happens in Scotland, no matter what happens in Dublin, I think it's a fascinating story of redemption, of what a difference 1 year can make. We know that from Rassie Erasmus, but 1 year in the life of Australian rugby to go down by 40-6 in Lyon in the final pool game and not get out of the pool for the first time ever. And then you look at the score last week. Whoa, yeah.
The funny thing for me was when you're teasing him to say, but he's not used to winning. He needs to get used to winning again as an Aussie supporter. Anyway, thanks, Harry. Thank you, Harry. Let's just have a quick listen to Carmen Bloomrich. You won the 1,000 Rand for predicting the score, or getting the closest. Remember, you can enter the score, the competition as well. Leave your score in the comments. This is a Lekker Rugby Pod. I'm Enver Velman. This is Carmen Bloomrich, a winner of the Shift the Score competition, guessing the score between the England team and the Springboks. So welcome, Carmen. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You got pretty damn close, 28-21, and the actual score was 29-20. How did you manage that? Do you know rugby? Do you follow rugby?
Oh, yes. Very big rugby fan. Come from a very, very big rugby family. So, yeah, don't miss a game. So I just had something inside me. I actually typed out 20, and then I was like, no, I think 21. So I should have actually went with my gut feeling.
Yeah, you thought they're going to score 3 tries now, probably. Optimistic. So are you a fan of Rassie, a fan of the Springboks? Where do you live and which team do you support in South Africa locally?
I'm currently between 2 provinces, between Pretoria and KZN for work. I've got places where I stay in both, but my heart is with the Sharks.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. Sorry to hear that. I'm a Bull supporter, as you probably realize by now.
Yes.
Yeah. So congratulations. I'm happy that you participated, and thank you for taking part in Sit and Cast's competition. Just as a matter of interest, how did you find out about the competition on Facebook? Where did you see it?
I just saw it on my Facebook news feed. Another friend of mine also entered, but yeah, he got the score way off. So I'm glad he shared the competition with me.
Now, seeing you're a winner and you've got a proven track record now, what do you think is going to happen this weekend against Wales? Rassie's picked a very, very strong team. Poor Wales got a whipping last week by the Australians of all teams. So what are you expecting from the Springboks this weekend?
I definitely think it's going to be a high-scoring game from the Springbok side. I'm liking the team he's chosen for Saturday. And yeah, getting our biltong and bra ready for Saturday night. Very excited for the game.
So, being a Shark supporter, who's your favorite Springbok player?
Eben Etzebeth.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. I could have asked you. I could have said it beforehand. Well, anyway, congratulations. It was a pleasure meeting you and pleasure talking to you. And thank you for participating. And you can enter again if you wanted to. Let's see if you can maybe get another chance. Thank you for making the time to speak to me.
Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Harry. We'll have a chat next week about what this alternation meant, who did the best, who disappointed a little bit, and I'll see you next week.
Cheers.